Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Daf Yud Tes. We're going to begin on Yud Chesed Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Toshma, the Tani Rami Bar Yecheskel. Tarnagel Shahoshid Roishoi L'Avir Klis Chuchas. If you have a situation where a tarnagel, it's called a rooster, it's a chicken, and sticks its head into the opening of a glass vessel. V'takabo, and it shouts into it, makes a bunch of noise, and because of its noise, v'shivro, and it breaks the kli. So the din is mesham nezek shalom. You have to pay full damages. V'yom Rabbi Yosef, I'm Rabbi Rav, sushe sanaf v'chamor shenoyar v'shivro sekel mesham chatzin nezek. Now, interesting, when it comes to a horse, or a donkey for that matter, that neighs or brays into a kli, and it causes the kli to break, there you only pay chatzi nezek. Okay. So, the reason why, so we can understand the seifa, is, as Rashi says, G'chol hani srois ninhu dekaychahu. Okay, fine. What's the din by the tarnagel? So we'll see. My love could go into Avid Chlasa Zimni. So, L'chaira, this case must be that it happened 3 times, as we continue to Yud Testament Aleph. Mar Savar Yesh Hada, Mar Savar Ein Hada. The case of the tarnagel, where it says you pay Nezek Shalem, where you pay Nezek Shalem, is because he holds that, even though it's a case of Sororos, it's the same thing, but all these cases happen multiple times, and therefore, according to this opinion, even though you normally pay Chatzi Nezek by Sororos, but there's a din of being a muad, and now it becomes the chiyuv of having to pay Nezek Shalom. Marsav Yesh Hada, Marsav Ein Hada. Lo. B'chad Zimna b'puta the Sumchus Rabban Kamifki. It's just the Machlokes Rabban Sumchus, whether you pay Chatzi Nezek the first time. Uvahom Shunahu. But this is unusual. The Isbei Bizrane. So no, there were seeds in there. So since there were seeds in there, it is normal for the tarnagel to go stick its head into it. Because it wasn't just an empty kli. And if it was Meshuna, then you would say Kavanas Lahazik, and it's under the told of Karen. Okay. Baravashi. Yesh Shinu Itzroiris, Ravi Nezek, or Ein Shinu Itzroiris, Ravi Nezek. So, we know, if we have a din of Sroiris, which is Chatzi Nezek, so we know when it comes to doing a Shinoi, when it comes to a tam, you pay Chatzi Nezek. So maybe you should pay Chatzi de Chatzi, which is a quarter. So Tiv Shalei Mid the Rava. The boy Rava, Yesh Haidol Sroiris, or Ein Hadol Sroiris, V'chal de Ein Shinoi. The fact that he mentions this whole question, whether or not a Sroiris can potentially get to the level of a Muad, shows that there is no difference. Whether it is, there's no difference, says Rashi. If let's say it was a quarter, then you should only have to pay chatzi nezek. Obviously, you don't pay full. If it was only a quarter, then you only have to pay half. So the fact that he doesn't mention it, well, shows there's no such thing as a quarter. No Dilma Rava, Imtim Salama Kamer. Imtim Salama Ein Shinoi, and therefore you always pay half. Yesh Hodo, Ein Hodo. Take it. Baravashi. Koach Kaichel Sumchas Kaichel Dami Olo. So this is something which we brought before. According to Sumchas, well, the din of Suris is an animal hits a rock while it's walking, and that rock shoots out and does damage. What happens if those shards of the thing that broke shot out afterwards and broke a second thing? So what's the din of koichai? Does it have the same din as koichai? According to Sumchas. So mi gomer halacha. Does he actually learn that there is such a thing as a halacha mashmesina regarding service? Umuki lo koichai. And he says, the halach mishmesina you pay chatin nezek is by koichai. Maybe he doesn't have the halach mishmesina at all. Haisam vetes let's say the animal kicks, or again you have these rocks shooting out from its feet. You pay half. The second case is because it's a case of sroris, which, as we debated, this clearly sounds like the sheet of the Rabbanim. So iboilhu. Hechi kaimer. How do we read this? Is it haisma vatas? It was kicking, vezika bibiuta, and it did damage by kicking. O sroris kurachayu, or in the case of sroris in the normal way, misham chatzin nezek. Rabbanan, and therefore this is like the sheet of the Rabbanan. Oldima haisma vatas was kicking. Vezika bibiuta, and again it did damage with its kicking. O sroris machmas biut, or the rock came because of its kicking, misham chatzin nezek. Which ki orche misham nezek shalim. Umani sumchasi. Maybe the reason why you only pay chatzin nezek, this is not a normal case of sroris, and therefore because it did damage through the rocks because of its kicking, then you pay chatzin nezek. Mashma normal sroris, you would pay nezek shalim. So tashma meseva darsal kli. Let's say it presses on a vessel, the shibarto, and it breaks. V'nafal hashever al kliach v'shivroi, and then that broken shard breaks something else, which is koichay. Al rishon mishal nezek shalim, the alcharon chatzin nezek. So it says on the second we pay nezek chatzin nezek. Mi sumchus mi isli chatzin nezek. He doesn't hold of chatzin nezek. Well, it's obviously like the shita of the Tanakama. V'chi tema rishon lo hataza. It means the first one shot out. B'sheni sheni l'hataza, and the second one that shot out. B'shani le'ilsumchas bein koichel. So maybe this is actually a raya that the sumchas does make a distinction between koichai and koichai. Then when it comes to koichel, you only pay chatzin nezek. El hade boy Ravashi koichel sumchas koichadami l'lavka koichadami tifshin le'lavka koichadami. You'd obviously be able to learn from here a raya, but if in fact this is like sumchas, and this is a case of koicho, and it says chatzin nezek, this would be a raya. So why don't we establish it? It's probably because we don't hold like this. Ravashi k'Rabbanan mokila. The truth is, Ravashi holds like this whole thing is like the Rabbanan, and that's why it says chatzin nezek. Uboil hach, and this is how it's read. Hoisma vatas vezika bibiuta. It was kicking. It did damage while kicking. Ostros korchayu chatzin nezek. Hamachmas biut rivia nezek. V'yesh shinoi, and therefore, if in fact it was a case of sroris, but it was a shinu in the sroris, so you actually pay a quarter. Odilma haisma vetas v'tisa biuta. Ostros machmas biut chatzin nezek v'ein shinoi teku. So this was the same question as posed earlier. Whether there's a shinui when it comes to sroris, whether or not we say the din is that you only pay revia. Boy mini Rabbi Abba bar Momam Ravami. So he asked the question. Some say it was Merav Chia Barabba. Kaismo lechas b'makom she efshula. El imkin minat tezes. Let's say this animal is going in a place where there is no possibility except for rocks to shoot out. He's on like a pebble or rock road, and basically there's rocks everywhere. And therefore, because there'll be all these spraying rocks all over the place by its walking, but instead, uba'ata, it kicked. And by kicking is what the hitiz of his zikamahu. So the truth is, it was in a place where definitely rocks are going to be shooting all over the place. But instead of, in the normal way, the rocks shot out by it kicking that area. Since there's no other way except while it's walking, it's going to be doing damage by it's shooting out. It's orche, even though it kicked. Maybe you could say no. Look at the reality. The reality is that it actually did damage by kicking. So therefore, we have to focus on that. Okay. Teku. Bamini Rav Yirmin Rav Zera. So you have an animal that's going in the Rishus Harabim, which we know normally your putter, if it's regal, maybe we don't read this next word, uvata v'tiza v'hezika. So rock shot out and it caused damage. Mahu. L'keren medaminan le v'chayeves. Do we say it's comparable to Karen, even though it's in sense of Rosh Hashanah to be chayev, it has to be a case of Karen. Says Rashi, hoyel v'chayeves chatzei nezek ki Karen, because Sororis is chatzei nezek, which is, we don't find chatzei nezek except when it comes to Karen, so maybe it's like Karen. Well, Dilma told the regel who patura. Maybe Sororis has to do with the regel. Says Rashi, called Sororis ki Yerchayu told the regel who patur Rosh Hashanah. So again, since it's the Rosh Hashanah, that's where the question is, because if it's connected to regel Rosh Hashanah is patur. If it's Karen, you be chayiv. So Amrulay Mistabra told the regel who. It's logical that it's a told the regel, therefore you're going to be patur. Weiter. Hitiz the Rosh Hashanah. Again, it's shooting out rocks in Rosh Hashanah, or Bezika Rosh Hashanah Mahu. So even though it's a told the regel, and you're patur Rosh Hashanah, but the damage, even though the source was in the Rosh Hashanah, but it shot out and damaged in the Rosh Hashanah. Amrulay Akira ein kan hanacha yesh kan. Amrulay Akira ein kan hanacha yesh kan. There is no Akira. All there is a hanacha. Says Rashi, Bitmia hanacha yesh kan. Kolemer pater hoyel ve'akira habi b'makom patur. It doesn't matter that it went into a hanacha. It landed in Rosh Hashanah. Its source, its the Akira is in Rosh Hashanah, and regular Rosh Hashanah is pater. Esvei, Haisma alechas b'derech. Person's walking on the road, v'tiza, and does damage. Ben Rosh Hashanah, ben Rosh Hashanah chayiv. So the din is that no matter where you are, you're chayiv. Even the Rosh Hashanah. My love, hatiza Rosh Hashanah, hezika Rosh Hashanah. So, which would be an unbelievable question, that in that situation you would still be chayiv. Whoa, hatiza Rosh Hashanah, hezika Rosh Hashanah. So we say over here, of course, if everything was the Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be patur because regular Rosh Hashanah, you're patur. But here's a tremendous chiddush, that even though it's true, it started in the Rosh Hashanah, but since it did damage to Rosh Hashanah, you're chayiv. What are you talking about? We just said Akira in kan hanacha yesh kan. Normally hadri b. I retracted. I retracted. So, why? Why would he retract? So the Rosh says that since the pasuk of Uvir b'stei acher, it's talking about in the Rosh Hashanah, but if the action is in the Rosh Hashanah and it shoots to Rosh Hashanah, you're still chayiv, because it was bir b'stei acher. It was done in there was damage in Rosh Hashanah. So even though you could maybe ask Kirin Khan Hanacha Yesh Khan, but the reality is the pasuk says vir b'stei acher, says the Rosh, and therefore because of that you tackle b'chayiv. Esvei Darsal Kli. If it rests on a vessel, v'shibarto, and it breaks on nafal hashever al kli acher v'shibro, and it shoots out and breaks something else, al rishon misham nezek sholem, v'achar misham chatzin nezek. V'tani Allah, and we learned regarding this, b'medim or memorim b'rshos hanizik. This only applies in Rishos hanizik, that this would be the din. Al b'rshos harabim, al harishon patura. When it comes to the first one, you're patur because it's a regel. The acharon chayeves. However, the acharon you're chayev. My love, hatiz rishus harabim, hazika rishus harabim, and still you're chayev by the second one. Lo, hatiz rishus harabim, hazika rishus yachid. Rabbi Yamid akira ein kan hanacha yesh kan amrulei hadri b. So again, I'm choizer. So when it comes to the din of damaging from rishus harabim to rishus yachid, Yitaku will be chayev. Eini for tomorrow, it's not the case as we continue the Yud Testament base. Eini, v'yom Rav Yochanan. Ein chatzi nezik choluk, lo rishus yachid, lo rishus harabim. There's no distinction when it comes to paying chatzi nezik. It doesn't matter where you are. If it takes place in rishus yachid or rishus harabim. My love, Hatiz Rishus Harabim, Zika Rishus Harabim. That all the damage took place in Rishus Harabim. Lo. Hatiz Rishus Harabim, Hatiz Zika Rishus Yachid. I Rabbi Kira Inkan Anachan Yeshkan, Amalei Hadri B. Okay. Eboy Sema, alternatively, Kim Rabbi Yochanan a Karen. When he said this statement, says Rashi, Ein Chatzi Nezek Cholok, Al Chatzi Nezek to Karen Kaimer. He's talking about there's no distinction when it comes to Karen, you always pay Chatzi Nezek. Skipping a line of a Chatzi Nezek Sroris, Olam Pater Rishus Harabim. Okay. Let's look at question 1. Okay. Haisa Mahalechas Rishus Harabim. Uva'ata Petiza Vezika Mahadin. So it's walking Rishus Harabim, and it kicks and damages and breaks something. So in that situation, you're pater because we said that's considered to be a told regel. Hatiz Rishus Harabim has Zika Rishus Yachid Mahadin. You're going to be chayiv, as we said. Okay. Weiter. Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Nesia, Rabbi Ishia, Akilud Rabbi Yehuda. So they were sitting around in front of this canopy, in front of the house of Rabbi Yehuda. Navig Milsa Mibinaihu. There was a matter that came from in front of them. Kasha Biznava Mahu. The wagging of the animal's tail. They wanted to know, what is a din? Is that considered to be, if it does damage, that's the normal way also in your potter, in Rishus Harabim? Because it's like a told of regel? Or is it Mishun, it's like Karen Yui Chayiv? So the other one said, does the owner need to hold on to this animal's tail? Says Rashi, so he's definitely going to be potter. Karinami. Why do you say the same thing by a horn? You have to hold on to your animal's horns. You're not going to hold on to your animal's horns, but if it does damage, you're still chayiv. So how's that a svara? You have to hold on to the tail, so maybe you're still chayiv if it does damage. Haki hashta. Karen lav orche. Ha orche. The Karen to do damage is not normal, unless it's doing it for its own kavana to do damage. However, when it comes to any part of the body of the animal that does damage, that is considered to be a told of regel. So if it's the normal way, mami boile. So then what exactly is the whole question? Sounds like a pretty simple question. So kishkush yasera miboile. If it was excessively wagging. So if that's the case, is that normal or not? So it could be there's a normal amount of wagging of a tail, and then there's an excessive amount. So if an animal uses an excessive amount of wagging of its tail, and it does damage, is that still considered to be orche? Okay. Weiter. Bayrav Eina. Let's say, not talking about the tail, but we're talking about the male member of the animal, and it does damage. Mi amrin and mi did have a Karen. It's like a horn. Karen lav yitzra take flay. When it came to the horn, is it not that it's the Yetzer Hara overtook it, and that's what caused it to damage? Hachinami lo shna. And therefore there's no difference. Dilma Karen Kavanas Lahazik, in Kavanas Lahazik Teku. There's no, by the Karen, there's a Kavanas Lahazik. Over here, Kavana is not Lahazik Teku. Okay, there's no Rashi on this. So you have these chickens, they're walking in the normal way, and it breaks. That's normal. Omar Avhuda lo shanu, that it's the normal way. It was tied by itself. Of a kosher adam chayev. But if a person tied it, then you're chayev. So nikshir me'elav man chayev. If it got tied up by itself, who's the one who's going to be chayev? Ilema bal hadalil. Are we talking about the owner of the rope? So let's slow down for a second. Let's look at this. Let's look at the Mishnah. So we have this case down properly. Okay, so we're all the way back to Yud Zayin. Hatarnagol muadim l'halach kedarkan. So a tarnagol is a muad when it goes the normal way, l'shaber. Hayab dalil kosher baraglav. If let's say you had a rope tied to its foot, so you pay chatzi nezek because this rope is considered to be like sroros. So now let's see this mission. Let's see this going again. Rav Huna lo shanu that you pay chatzi nezek achara. El shenikshir me'elav got tied by itself. Avakashu adam chayev. If a person tied it, then you're going to be chayev. So nikshir me'elav man chayev. Who's going to be the one who's paying chatzi nezek over there? If it was done by itself. Ileim abal hadalil. He was referring to the owner of the rope. Hechidami. Idi atzne. If it was for hiding it, so onusu, because he wasn't intending to cause it damage. Lo atzne poishehu, says Rashi. Bekul nezik bo yishul mishahari boirahu hashlichur shasarabim. El chayabal tarnagol. It's referring to the owner of the tarnagol is chayav. So mashna kuli nezek deloi. Why don't you pay all damages? Dechsiv ki yiftach ish bor lo shor bor. It says in the pasuk that when a person opens up a pit, not that the shore is the pit, not when the ox dug the pit. It's when a person digs the pit, not when the ox digs the pit. It says Rashi, lo ki yichra shor bor by delil tarnagol karahu. And it was the tarnagol that did all this. So chatinazek nami ish bor v'lo shor bor, which means you shouldn't have to pay anything. He threw the rope off its leg. Says Rashi, Shazar katarnagol hadalil b'shiber b'zri kasai kalim dehavisaris. They threw the rope off the leg, and the rope broke the bucket or whatnot, and therefore that's why you're chayiv. When Rav Huna said his statement was just elsewhere. Delil had fine. Fine. Delil hefker. Rav Huna nikshim me'ela potter. Delil hefker. Okay. Rav Huna nikshim me'ela potter. If let's say, as we said, if it was by itself tied, then you're potter. Since we say v'lo shor bor, kasher adam chayiv. However, if someone ties it, you're chayiv mishum my chayiv. Rav Huna bar menoyach mishum boydoi hamizgalgul baragli other ragli behemoth. We saw this before, like a pit in which it rolls and causes other people to get to be damaged. Okay, and that was actually with a tzad shava we learned from Bor and Dav Vav. Question 2. Delil chikashru adam. So if you have this bucket that was tied to a tarnagol, v'hizik a tarnagol im delil, and it did damage, man chayiv in that situation. It was the person that did it. So im niskel adam b'delil chayiv a heavily boram miskalgel. V'im hizik ba'adi aduye. However, it only got damaged while the rope was thrown off. Mishal bala tarnagol chatzin nezim mishum sroros. So if the rope threw off, then that's sroros, that's koichay. However, if let's say it actually did damage while it was like still attached and everything, then you're going to be paying nezek shalom. We're going to stop here actually because we're giving new Mishnah. I know it's a lot, but it's okay. Looks like a good place to stop there. Question TA7. Tarnagol shahishit roshel avir kli zuchuchas the takabo v'shavroi kama mishalom alib the rabbanan. Fine. So how much should you have to pay? So this is your test. This is your test. So we said it's really it seems like a machlokas, right? So if there's no seeds in it, totally beboy the shinu esroris o revio chatzi. Let's go back and see that. Where is that? Oh, it's all the way up top. So he said, we're talking about B'chad Zimna, but the Machlok is Sumchas Nerabanan, and it's Meshona. No, it's the Isli Bizarne, because it has these seeds in them. So therefore, again, if there's seeds, so that's considered to be the normal way. And since that's normal, so then that would be the regular case of Sroris, and therefore that would be the Machlokas Rabbanon, and that would be you would pay, if we're talking about the Rabbanon, you pay Chatzi Nezek. If there's no seeds, and then it's totally in the question of Shini Usuris Iravia or Chatzi. That's the whole question, whether or not you would actually pay by Shini Usuris, do you pay a fourth in that situation or not? And that was the question. Okay. That's your test of it out. Okay. Like that. And TB 7. Tarnago Shaisha Roshal Haver Klis Chooks of Dakabav Shavar Ma'adin. See what I wrote. It's the exact same thing. Yesh Hevdel Im Yesh Zeroyim Betoicha Kli Oz Zek Kedarko Vahavi Kishain O Im Ein Zeroyim Oz Zem Shuna V'Im Chayim Medin Karen Shekavanas Lahazik Adkan.